His desire to see men and women working for others continues to shape faith and justice initiatives today, like the Jesuit Volunteer Corps and the Ignatian Volunteer Corps, and programs individually tailored for Jesuit University and high school campuses and parishes, each pursuing in its own way the service of faith and the promotion of justice.
Esta visión, diríamos, positiva es la que va a...
This vision, which we can say is positive, will be transmitted externally to all. I think the messages of Father Arrupe go hand in hand with social justice, with globalization, with women's rights, with development, with the defense of human rights, with universal brotherhood, etc. Also to the youth, to believe in the youth as well.
The legacy of Pedro Arrupe lives on, most particularly in the Jesuit Refugee Service, the one service organization he personally initiated on an international basis. JRS began in response to the plight of Vietnamese boat people in the 1970s and serves an ever-growing wave of refugees today that numbers more than 40 million around the world.
He had come to an early conclusion, Arrupe, that if we were going to be coherent in our faith, we really had to promote justice. He'd seen injustice all over the world. He knew that the greater part of people in the world live in a state of utter poverty, and that poverty is radicated in the systems. So he knew this, and he felt so strong. He was convinced that if we're going to have a coherent, one that's believable, apostolate, and a set of ministries, it has to include faith and justice.
You have to change, because the world is changing, and then comes the ongoing formation, which is not just to have 2 weeks of theology, sometimes some books, some professors speaking of theology. No, it's much more than that. How to change the attitudes.
A lot of people are sort of uneasy with these changes. Wonder whether we've changed too much, gone too far.
His faithfulness to that 31st General Congregation has been one of the points of friction between Arrupe and at least a small section of the society, which went as far as a request to the Pope to get kind of separation of part of the Society of Jesus, which would remain allegedly faithful to the old way of life.
A disaffected group of European Jesuits were particularly unhappy about the new emphasis on social action and what they considered a downgrading of religious discipline and prayer. They proposed to the Vatican to break off from the Arrupe-led society to become so-called discalced Jesuits.
Paul VI was concerned about it and made an inquiry with the Spanish bishops, because that was mainly in Spain, as a matter of fact. And he asked the Spanish bishops, if I do accept that request, what happens, and so on. And I would say, thanks God, the Spanish bishops were wise enough to say that would be very dangerous for a father.
But this would not be the end of it for Arrupe. Those Spanish Jesuits had deep ties in the hierarchical maze of the Vatican, and they would, in a sense, have the final word. Continuing to face resistance from some Jesuits who consider his emphasis on change and adaptation to be a personal agenda, Arrupe determines to convene another general congregation to either ratify or modify his priorities.
Arrupe, not alone, but advised by very many, came to the conclusion that he would need to call a 32nd General Congregation to bring together the major legislating body of the society to clarify a certain number of issues, to give him the support he needed in order to put into practice the decisions made before.
I am convinced that society needs now a general congregation. It's a necessity. And I think it's no question for nobody in society today to doubt about the long-lasting important matters we have to deal with. Difficult matters and pertaining to the whole society. Everything is new. And they have there a challenge for us. We oblige us to go to the bottom of our spirituality. But naturally, we have to stop and think and to reflect, to evaluate, and to see whether we are going the right path.
In 1975, the 32nd General Congregation issues the decree, Our Mission Today, the Service of Faith and the Promotion of Justice. The document is so hotly debated that it is not voted on until the last day of the meeting. When it finally passes with an overwhelming majority, it removes all doubts that Arrupe is on the right track.
And so one of the main things was articulating and promulgating a mission statement for our Society of Jesus today that would be in line with our original documents. But boy, it was a long time and a very difficult road we had to pursue to come to this. Probably the best expression we had of our Jesuit mission is the service of faith. That's what we're there for. But that service of faith has to include a promotion of that justice in society, which is the embodiment of God's love and saving mercy. You know, from our point of view of where we sat in Rome, Latin America was very receptive to his message because they were living in a poverty situation that was a grinding poverty that was real, and they felt it. And he said, no, this thing about faith and justice, he said, if we are serious about this, and it's not just something on the paper, we really have to pray. Because this is going to be a radical change. And if we promulgate this, we are going to lose our friends. We are going to find opposition, both on the civilian level and on the ecclesiastical